keep on you. All right, well, welcome to November CocoaHeads, everyone. Thank you for coming. So, as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. A little bit of housekeeping, as always. I'll keep it short today. So, hey, I'm Zach, and I'm helped by Christian to run CocoaHeads. So together we put these events on, but we couldn't do it without Bilu, who are our major sponsor for the event. So Bilu cover pretty much everything. We're in their offices tonight, which we're really appreciative for. They cover our sort of ongoing costs, like our hosting and things like that. And they also cater on the night. So a big thank you to Bilu, as always. A reminder that we have a code of conduct. You can read it in the website on full. But it boils down to a few key points, and they are to be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware. If there's any issues or concerns, or to discuss any violations of the code of conduct, please speak to myself or Christian, or you can message us online after the fact if you're more comfortable doing it that way. Should probably get rid of that animation. It's not so new anymore, but we have a new Slack group. That is one of the ways to contact us online. So the Slack community is just a place you can hang out throughout the month, ask questions, post jobs, have a chat about all things Apple, iOS development, things like that. Feel free to scan that code to join. Otherwise, I'll put it back up in the break. And we've joined forces with the Melbourne group, as well as a few other of the smaller CocoaHeads communities around Australia and New Zealand. So now we have kind of one big super group, whereas before we just had our own instance, and it was a little bit quiet in there. So I saw on meetup, we've got quite a few people attending for the first time. Just a hand up if that's you. Big welcome, a round of applause. Hope you enjoy it. Everyone please make everyone else feel welcome. So if you like what you see here tonight, definitely check out Melbourne CocoaHeads. They run a similar event to us, a couple of talks. We run on the third Thursday of the month, they run on the second. And they also have an excellent live stream, so you're able to watch remotely, which is great. Looking ahead, it's very important. So this is our last month of formal talks for the year. In December, we're hosting a fun sort of quiz night. Please note it's a week earlier than normal because our normal third Thursday event pushes us too close to Christmas. So we're going to be hosting on the 14th of December at the Google offices in Piedmont because we're joining with the Android developer meetup to sort of have one big quiz. And for any of you who know Craig Stanford, he's going to be running the quiz as he did last year. Then in January, there's no CocoaHeads, so have a month off. And in February and beyond, we're still looking for talks, so please get in touch. But obviously follow the meetup page for announcements and locations and things like that. A call out for the quiz, we do need prizes. Any kind of giveaway items, welcome, t-shirts, socks, stickers, software licenses, whatever you've got. T-shirts are great, they're always a hit. But if you can get anything from your work and bring it along on the night, that would be great. You don't have to let us know in advance what you're bringing, but if you don't mind, just send me or Christian a message so we kind of have an idea of what we're looking for. But we'll probably bug you throughout the month in Slack as well, just to remind you. A little bit of developer news. So these Meet with Apple experts are still running. You can apply online, and I think there's still availability in some of them for kind of all things App Store, business marketing, things like that. And then also the Vision Pro Labs are still in Sydney, which is great. Last month it was kind of breaking news that they were open. If you haven't been yet, I think there's still some availability, so you can jump online, apply, and get to try your app or project on the Vision Pro. Very worthwhile experience. All right, on to tonight's schedule. So you've just heard me going at housekeeping. We'll have a hiring segment, but our first talk is on the future of mobile. Then we'll have a quick break and we'll be on to our second talk on frictionless teamwork with Gitflow. So without further ado, is anyone hiring or looking for work? It's now your opportunity to stand up, give a little spiel, plug yourself, plug your company. Yep, feel free to stand up.
Graham, I'm now currently an indie Swift UI developer. The product's great, the sales aren't, which is why I'm back in. I have a big background as well in corporate IT development with a lot of SQL Server. And unfortunately, a lot of Windows.
Anyone hiring? Anyone else looking for work? Yeah.
I'm from New Zealand also, just looking for new opportunities to relocate. Sydney mostly. I have background in cross-platform, native. At the moment, mainly working on React Native. happy to.
Great, thank you. Well, people, you know who to talk to in the break if you are hiring.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, forgive me.
Yeah, I'm from Ladbrokes, as Ladbrokes Nets, so gambling. So yeah, so we are also hiring and expanding our team. So if anybody interested, so we are moving from React Native to Native, full rewrite, completely brand new code. I mean, existing with the previous React Native, but interesting project, lots of UI to build with Swift UI. Yeah.
Cool. And if anything pops up throughout the month, there's always the jobs channel in Slack. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Andreas. And
So we do have a couple of free seats up the front, I see, so if you want to sit down, you should be able to.
Ooh.
Hello everyone. I'm here to try and talk a little bit about what will our industry and what we do look like in about 5 years. I don't think I can predict it on my own, so I was hoping to have a bit of a conversation. So I'm going to start throwing some ideas. We'll go through a few things, and I want to hear what you folks have to say, and we'll go back and forth and see where we get. Because I think it's really, really difficult to predict, but maybe together we can get somewhere interesting. So I work for Thoughtworks. I was born in Argentina. I've been in Australia for about 15 years. And I started doing iOS development roughly when the first iPhone came out. A few years after that, I started doing Android as well. I'm sorry about that, but it happened. I've always taken things from the sort of the low level. I always like graphics programming, things like that, and that's sort of how I got into this. In the end, I think I've been through a journey where I get to a point where I realize that what I want to do is make cool things for people, regardless of what they are, but always in this mobile space. So let's talk a little bit about, let's start talking about some ideas. So the first idea that we want to discuss here is the concept of augmenting cognition. So what does that mean? Do you folks know what an abacus is? Who can tell us?
Calculator.
Yep, abacus.
The ones I remember are a row of rods with buttons or tokens of some sort on them, and then you slide them across.
And what do you use it for?
Certain methods to indicate numbers and do addition, subtraction, etc.
That's right.
It's like a really early calculator.
That's it, really old calculator. That's exactly right, thank you. Yes, it's a calculating device. It's thousands of years old, and it's being used all throughout the world. The interesting thing is when people get really, really good at calculating with an abacus, if the abacus goes away, they can actually continue using it if you get good enough with the device without having the device there, just by using your brain. So there's actually competitions about this. People say, hey, throw me a long list of 3-digit numbers, and they can do it mentally without having the abacus on hand. And there's a whole Wikipedia page about that and how you get good enough. So the interesting thing is that as a tool, the abacus gives you, if you get good enough, a whole bunch of cognitive benefits, and there's a couple of Wikipedia references here that sort of shows you that the abacus is modifying the way that you work, that your brain works, and improving your cognition. Now let's compare that as a tool with a calculator, right? So calculator can also make you calculate faster. You can learn to quickly type numbers, but if I took the calculator away, and I don't know where it is, I don't even remember how to do long division by hand, right? It's a different experience. So learning to use a calculator has no cognitive benefits in comparison to the abacus, right? Because that idea that it's transforming me, it doesn't really happen. So it's helping me, but my relationship to the tool is completely different, right? I really feel stupider than before if the tool is taken away, which is not the case with the abacus. So this type of categorization is called cognitive artifact, and there's two broad types. One is the complementary, the first type that we're talking about, where we're working together and it's sort of enhancing me as I use it. And the second one is called a competitive artifact. It's completely different. Here's a couple of other examples. Another example is a map, right? So if I'm using a map, it's not just the map, but also the concept of knowing how to use a map to get to places, or I don't need the actual map. It's just a way for me to know how to communicate to others where things are, how to get to places, regardless of the actual map or not. And maybe another example of a competitive one is a spell checker, right? A spell checker would really help me, right? And has me in many ways, but I don't know if this happens to you all, but when it's taken away, I have to write complicated words by hand. I may not know exactly, I'm going to remember. So that's potentially another example of a competitive cognitive artifact. So a little word of caution is that this, we're looking at it from the perspective of how does laziness, or how does the fact that I'm using this device to help me in some way is affecting me in a negative dimension. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is black or white, or that this is all bad and this is all good, or anything like that. It's just an interesting way of thinking about these tools, right? So with that in mind, let's go through a little round of complementary or competitive. So let's talk about Facebook. Is Facebook as a tool competitive or complementary?
I can't categorize it because I'm not sure that it's good.
Yeah. That's a really good one. Don't know. Any other opinions?
Bit of both.
Yeah, bit of both. Why?
Because the content is dynamic,
Content is dynamic.
could be complementary, competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's like GPT as
I like that. It's like GPT. Yeah.
Well, the user-generated content, it creates like a bias among users, right? Where they may want to one up other users, like like the whole Instagram thing, sort of, I would say.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I'd probably go competitive because its existence has taken away a lot of funds from normal journalism, which is now gone. And so sources of news are concentrated in these randomly inaccurate sources. So if you just took Facebook away, we're worse off than we were about news 10, 15 years ago.
I like that one. That's pretty sad.
It could be complementary in getting you to think about sort of people beyond your immediate sort of vicinity as well.
Yes.
We have a lot of weaker ties on now that maybe we are trained to think about more.
Yeah, I get to socialize with people that I haven't seen before in 15 years or 20 years or
It's
whatever.
also competitive because it creates echo chambers
And it creates a
where
chain.
it narrows your actual view.
Yeah, that's bad. What about pen and paper?
Depends on the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using it as like a reminder tool, as a mental aid for something, if you're writing books and you don't have pen and paper or some alternative, there's a limit to how complex a story you can write or give.
I would say competitive
Competitive, why?
because without it you need to
It is your brain.
exactly remember stuff.
Sorry, in the back.
Say complementary because I think there are plenty of studies that show when you write things down, you remember it better as well.
I like that one. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And also competitive because it destroys the oral traditions of history.
That's true.
What about competitive complementary, because if you have tasks to complete and you tick a box or cross off a list, you get that rush, like chemical rush, and it gives you that positive reinforcement to keep being productive.
That's a great one. So there's some addiction going on there. Okay. What about Xcode?
Competitive,
I wouldn't
100%.
swear as much if it didn't exist.
This one is painful, isn't it? Opinions?
Well, I think it's complementary.
Complementary.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to use VS Code or something for Swift? Like server-side Swift on Linux is really hard to do without. It's much better to do it in Xcode than.
I guess people would also develop the skill to be able to think about the code without actually having it in front of them, though.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think that will happen. Or
not the whole thing, but little bits of it. You could imagine how to write a feature before you start looking at the code.
Yep. Yeah. Like a feature, little code, but Xcode goes away.
Yeah, complementary because all the stuff like what I suggest and the things it can do means you can build more complex things than you could if you actually were doing it in Assembler or some simpler tool. So it assists you to build more complex, which may not be a great thing, but you can build a more complex product.
Yeah. So you can see it's all sort of in a gray area, right? There's positives and negatives. One more. LLMs, complementary or competitive?
I think both, because you can get like really complementary assistive tasks out of it. You want to learn something, but also competitive because I've seen, for instance, in my own case, how I've been abusing so much for certain things like creating content of it. Like my partner would tell me, well, you don't write an email anymore, like thinking about it. And that's dangerous. That's like the calculator.
Yeah, I like that one. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a key point because the distinction and what I'm trying to stress here is there's this situation where something is helping me, but at the same time, it's sort of taking something away from me, right? And these concepts, if you want to dig in further, these are not my ideas. It's ideas of Dr. David Krakauer of the Santa Fe Institute. There's a link there. If anyone is interested, I'll share the slides later on. But he explains about this, the way that technology affects us when we use it. From that perspective, let's try a little bit to dig into the relationship between us and our technology with something around how far I can get. Meaning, there's a little universe of things that I can do, right? By myself, I can eat close to my neighbor. So imagine this is the universe of things that I can do. I get a new tool, right? And my universe sort of expands. I got a car, I can crash, I can visit my friend, I can do all the things that I couldn't do before, positive or negative, right? And this is sort of like me as a tool user, as a person. My universe is expanding, right? So myself, in some sense, is also expanding. So if you keep adding, say you add a banking app, now I can go on holidays because I have a car, phone, banking app. So there's a whole bunch of things that I can do there. If you think about it, this affects what I can do, how I can think, what I can think. And depending on what I'm doing, it has different levels of control, right? Because if I have a car, I can go somewhere, but that doesn't mean that I have control over the car. In some sense, it also has control over me. It's that relationship we were talking about before. So taking that into consideration and thinking about it a little bit, and the amount of things that we've been adding to our life, I've been calling this thing a highly integrated app. So suppose you have something that grabs all of these tools, or maybe even the tools themselves working together to expand even further, right? If you think about it, some degree of coordination here, where the phone, the watch, and everything else in your life works together, makes it so that the universe of things that you can do is even expanded even more. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So suppose I want to plan a trip with my partner, and I have a series of constraints for this call. I need to figure out where you want to go. You need to just look at my schedule, run the schedule, figure out how much it's going to cost, all these things, and based on that, be able to solve it, right? These are the constraints of the problem. So this is the difference between an older way of approaching this problem and maybe a newer way with the tools that we have today. So something old would be looking at all of these quick steps, going online, looking at how much money I have in the bank, just going one by one, maybe looking at my phone, messaging the other person, etc. And it's super, like a very integrated example would be for my app to help me do this. Maybe I can have a conversation with the app, whatever that app is, and I'm not necessarily talking about an app on your phone. Think about more of a conversation with a bunch of your devices, right? Maybe they can help you by providing some options, and then maybe you can go back and forth and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. I mean, ideally, you would just say, I want to do this, and it would just do it for you, right? But I don't think that's very realistic because how do you communicate all the requirements in one go without having some sort of conversation? So I'm saying I think we're moving from here to here in many ways. We're saying, and if you look at the way things have been going, as these little pieces become more and more commonplace and as devices are more and more around us, we're going this way. And the interesting thing is that if we follow that logic, the idea here would be as I have more and more and more of my goals met by this set of devices around me, we'll be moving more of the things that we do over there, outsourcing more of what we do to those devices and servers, etc. And in a sense, this will all become lazier in a way that is similar to what we were talking about in the beginning, right? So like we were saying before, LLMs, now there's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't even think about, right? But what is our relationship with them? So in many ways, this is effortless interaction that we can have with these highly integrated apps. And again, I'm not saying the specific, a little app on your phone, but some sort of something new, whatever that might look like. So following that thread, in 5 years, we'll all be lazier than we are now, thanks to these apps. And there's questions around this, like if this happens, will Apple, Google let other players integrate? Will they use the opportunity to grow their own platform features? Who will own this chunk, right? I'll pause here for a moment. Any thoughts on this?
On the last one, I suspect EU rules probably will try and constrain the I'm keeping my walled garden completely. They may force control of the data to belong to the user and stop them using monopoly or try and reduce their power. Whether that happens is another question, but that's my guess. That's the way they'll try and go.
Please.
Two thoughts. So you mentioned the whole travel planning and everything. There'll be people who are skeptical and they'll be like, oh, would I trust this app to give me the best deal? Like, would they think that, oh, I can get a better deal myself? Would they think that, oh, by using this app, they're taking a cut and then giving me a deal, that sort of thing? Just a thought. And the other one would be, this sounds a bit like WeChat as well.
Yes, that's a really good point because that's exactly where I was going next. Like, super apps are sort of a part of this conversation, right? I think it's a little bit different, but definitely you can see that platform within one app. And the idea for those who haven't heard of the super app concept is that you have an app as a platform. So you have an app that can charge money, send money, messaging, a whole bunch of things, in particular WeChat. So it's really WeChat as a thing is and these platforms are really good for whatever the source, maybe a brand, to talk to the consumer. I don't know how useful or or how much of that you can trust. That's the other side. Was exactly what you were saying. But it's definitely, I think, part of this thread, of this overall trend. Yes.
There's also privacy implications in this.
Absolutely.
Whoever owns the super app has access to a lot of data about you. That's the.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think we're also in a especially vulnerable place. We have to be quite careful about what we do. And as small developers, the software that we write is so close to the person and so imbibed in all these privacy and security implications that we have to be super careful.
Can I add something as well?
Yeah, please.
I think also on the slide before you were talking about it becoming frictionless, and in some ways that's good, but it also means, like some of the examples before, you externalize the thinking. Maybe some friction and actually figuring out where you want to go or what you want to do or would be useful in that. You could consider more options, and likely these things could be personalized, but you probably miss out on a lot of opportunities that could be better or better, sort of harder to be categorized or kind of fit into the model.
Totally. I worry when I start thinking about these frictionless things, I worry that maybe we are thinking about this in a little bit like the wrong way. It's like someone saying, why are we using paper when we could be using stone to write things, right? It's too easy. Where's the old tradition of singing songs instead of writing, right? There's an aspect of that as well, right? And I worry about that a bit, but yes?
There's also issues if it's using some sort of learning model and starts going, well, this fits most people. You end up with the 10 million tourists show up at the one pink lake or the whatever, and it actually destroys the local reason why people like to go there. Or, oh, we've recommended 50,000 people to go to the same restaurant tonight.
Yep.
Oops.
Yeah. Well, what's to stop Google from charging companies to send traffic their way?
What do you mean stop? They're already doing it.
Yeah, maybe more egregiously. Cool. So what does it all mean? I'm thinking things are more personal, but at the same time, they move away from me and into my devices and the things that I use. Lots of concerns around storing personal information, passwords, etc. I'm wondering what personal information we'll be storing there next. And there's always this push against what do I store on my device and what goes to the cloud or somewhere else. I think we're all painfully aware of those conversations when we need to develop something. It's like, do we put it in the device? Does it have to be in the back end? What happens with this, et cetera, et cetera? What happens if I store PII on the device versus putting somewhere else, et cetera? So it really seems that we have like a personal, intimate relationship with these devices, and effortless, highly integrated, highly personalized app. That's a trend. I think again, we don't know exactly what shape that will take, but there is this overall trend of moving away from just one device to many devices to cloud and like an ongoing conversation. And a few other things there. Share your thoughts. Anything else here?
I feel like the privacy is probably a strength of mobile platforms and like client devices and client side apps in general, because you could do very intimate things without sharing that data with anybody. But I feel like there's like a step missing that's between something staying on your device and staying within the network of all your personal devices. Right now that's sort of mediated by the cloud, a third party. And maybe there's some scope there for if you're going to expand the domain of these apps that will cut through a bunch of your devices, your watch, your phone, your car. Maybe there is some scope for some new kind of protocols or some new technology to allow stuff to be shared freely, but in a contained way that doesn't involve anybody like Google or
Totally.
Apple reading it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I don't know if you get the same feeling, but it looks a lot like we get a lot of push to take our data and take it to the backend. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, for example, like Facebook, like I'm trying to not use it because I don't like the idea of sharing my private life there. But I actually cannot live without it because if I'm not gonna be using Facebook, I'm losing a lot of information, opportunity, connection with my friends, everything. Also about WhatsApp, you know, if I don't have a WhatsApp, my friends, old friends, creating groups on WhatsApp, even at work, you know, if I'm not in these groups, I'm like out of this society. So they're going for beer or something and I'm losing this. And I really don't want it. I don't want to use Facebook, I don't want to use WhatsApp, but I'm actually not existing for my community if I don't have it. And by using it, I'm losing my own private time because I could do a lot of things in my life if I will not have a Facebook, if I will not have a WhatsApp. I'm spending a lot of time just checking things, informations, everything. That's what I don't like.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You don't have control.
Yeah, I have something to add, referring back to Facebook, because I'm really annoyed by Facebook because I use my private browsing mode on my Safari. I have no freaking idea how Facebook tracks on it. Because, I mean, if I'm looking for a travel deal or a holiday in Europe, let's say if I'm looking for Austria, I'm getting Austria coming on my Facebook. I have no idea why. So how they do that? I have private browsing mode. I do not keeping my tracking history on my browser.
Still skipping data. I think there's also a bunch of more privacy stuff there coming. Is if you really want it to be useful, then you may have to go the holiday. Have you got accessibility issues that might impact the decision? So you start sharing health data so it can make sensible decisions. What your choices are might depend about your gender identity or whatever. Again, you share that, where's the data go? It's fraught with privacy risks, the super whatever it is. If you have to release that sort of data off your own platforms, I see
your
that
travel
big problem.
insurance for you.
Sorry?
Especially if it's going to book your travel insurance for you. And
Anything
take
else,
all
but
that data
as soon
as
as you
well.
release it for any purpose, you have no control over it anymore. It's gone like anything else.
And I guess mobile only breaks down if you're trying to share it with multiple people, like you would be when you're traveling often.
To younger people, are younger people aware of this? Like, you know, growing up TikTok generation or whatever, are they just going to enter the? I mean, it might not be for us, but it might be for you.
I definitely know some.
They'll just go push.
A nephew is 18 and he's definitely doesn't use any social media by choice.
All right.
We're very conscious choice.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it didn't impact me, but last week, I imagine a large portion of the population became acutely aware of whether a smartphone, if they were on the Optus network, whether it was competitive or complementary, the services on their smartphone.
Totally.
Cool. What I think is fascinating about this is if you gave this talk to an exec somewhere, they would have completely the opposite opinion. They'd be rubbing their hands and saying, yeah, tell me how to do this.
How can we make a yield on this?
It's the money.
So,
anyone buy a product by Monday?
A few things. In terms of channels of reaching us and the way that those could evolve, my observation is that notifications are usually a pretty poor interaction method. If you think about the system trying to reach out back to you, it's really crappy to have this thing pop up on your screen and that's all you can do. And you know, you have all these from all these different places just appearing and you can tap. So I'm thinking that, and I would like to be challenged with this, that we will see new ways to hand over tasks and share rather than just using notifications, right? And I base that on the idea that keeping our apps in our customers' phones is difficult, it's expensive. We spend a lot of money from companies just trying to get people and keep them engaged in receiving our notifications. And it seems to be like a win-win. If we find a new way of doing that is better, then companies don't have to spend a lot of money trying to keep reaching the same people or their customers, and customers have a better experience. And then this is all the idea of as we have more devices, probably we'll have more channels for companies and systems to reach us. And there's an opportunity here because if that's the case, then all this stuff will need to be integrated by someone, right? And go back to that question of who will be doing that integration. It will be Google, Apple owning it, will be something else, don't know. Any thoughts? What do you folks think?
Go.
Yes.
It's kind of tangentially related, but I guess the need to constantly grab someone's attention through notifications or buzzes or beeps or new posts or whatever is really tied to that business model that's served by ads, where you get paid when someone sees your ad, and so you need them either in an app for as long as possible or for as many times, like 10 times a day or whatever. And I think probably doesn't affect the huge companies at the moment, but you see on the smaller end anyway, a lot of businesses moving towards a subscription business model for their software. And I think that's a really interesting change. I think there's a lot going on there. It seems to me that subscriptions are more aligned with what the customers want as well. So if you're selling a subscription to your customer for X dollars per year, the customer doesn't need to be in the app every day, or you don't constantly need to bring them back into the app. As long as they're paying you, you're happy. And from the customer's perspective, let's say an amazing photo editing app that you might only use 4 times a year when you take your kids on a road trip or something. Like, if you're getting enough value to pay for that, what does it matter that you're only using it 4 times a year? It feels like that sort of the incentives are really aligned there, where if you're willing to pay for it, then that company's happy by your sort of patronage, and it just feels like a win-win. And I do wonder if we'll see more of a move to that. I mean, look at the recent changes. I think Instagram and maybe it's Facebook too, you can pay for it in the EU now, I think. And that kind of means, I wouldn't put it past Facebook to keep up the old habits, but it does mean that they don't need to be as aggressive with things like notifications not actually showing you what the content is, so that they get you to open the app and get sucked in for the 10 more minutes. I'm kind of closely following the sort of shift for consumer software moving towards subscriptions, for both just because I'm interested, but also like professionally. And I do think we're getting to a point where incentives are more aligned, but it might mean you use fewer apps. Like, you might not be in and out of 50 apps every day, viewing ads, waiting 3 seconds to dismiss the banner or whatever it might be, but you pick 5 or 10 apps that really make your life better, and you pay $20, $30 a year for them. But yeah, that's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Kind of related.
That's a really good point, but also there's an overall trend of companies moving from charging us for product to charging us for services, because it's easier to charge for an ongoing service that you may forget about. Particularly the first sale is easier than if I have to put a whole bunch of money in one go and buy the product. Cool. In terms of integration, maybe AI could fill in some of these gaps, right? The user to the phone or whatever device I'm using could be used to interpret my intent, and then from the phone to API, whatever in the back end, could be mediating there as well, right? I think I'm interested, I'm sure you are as well, in this. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the AI advancements have been driven by back-end people, and I think we can do it as well. It doesn't have to be back-end, it can be us. There's a lot that we can do. The problem is we have more constraints, but they can't reach when the phone is not connected or with other problems, right? So we need to be smart, and I think we need to get to this point of how do we put models and other things onto our phones. Apple and Google, they both have APIs for us to use, so it's a challenge of how do we do that. Has anyone here played with that? Getting an LLM or something else running on their phone?
Yeah, I'm integrating that with Verma to capture the intention of the user for building the structural layout of a video. And it is true, I miss so much to having a local modeling or ML that I can run without the need of backend, mostly because Filma is a video editing app offline, so it doesn't need to sync with any service or any API or any files on the cloud. And that's the main purpose of this app, to make everything possible where you are at home or in the countryside. So whenever we get to a point that we can have a very high powerful model, but also powerful device that can read an LLM easily, that will be a win for sure for mobile apps, because right now it's really complicated. I'm waiting for Apple to release something, because they started earlier with natural language processing, which can do some of those things, but it's not that good as the big LLMs that we have.
Okay. Can you share, like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you share a little bit about how big the setting, the set of files is for ML? Like, is it a complicated thing? What was the effort?
Well, if you want to convert a model to CoreML, one of the 16 ones, I think it's possible in majority of them, but I think the capacity of our devices are not good enough to handle that. And that's why all of this in the server side, because you need these big GPUs, and that's where they are getting the money from. You pay for and it's so high costly as well to run these models, even for OpenAI, that they may be facing soon issues with the costs, because it's so cheap for what it cost them to generate that. So I think it's a key, yeah, definitely. If we can manage to get powerful models run locally, offline, that would be, the next chapter.
Cool, thank you for sharing. Right. So, a little bit of the optimistic view, because it's often that when we're talking about these things, we go for security problems and a bit of the more scary sides. So I think overall things are going to be get a lot easier. Planning, coordinating, booking a trip overseas, moving, finding a day. I also think that this could bring in some fairly interesting advancements in the way that we work and interact with the government, as long as we can get the government to help us on the way and build APIs and share the information with us. I think that could be very helpful. Accessibility. If we use LLMs, I think makes it a lot easier to write tests, but also to set up properly accessible views and test them for things like the voiceover / font sizing, colors, all these things, which can be pretty cumbersome by hand, but a lot easier if you have some sort of help. So tying this all together, what will mobile look like in 5 years? Possibility. Highly integrated apps through multiple channels, UIs come to you through multiple experiences, effortless, for better or worse, and less overall control for the user. So because I am not doing the little tasks, then I have less overall control. And so I'm going to leave you.
You left out one thing. Siri will be unchanged.
Jimmy with insights. Thank you, Jimmy. I'll leave you with this thought. When people talk about traveling to the past, they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small. But barely anyone in the present really thinks that they can radically change the future by doing something small. So do something small today. Thank you.
That was pretty interactive, but does anyone have any questions before we take a break?
Is there a presentation about Vision Pro?
Maybe next year.
You can talk to Andres in the break if you have any questions. We're going to take about 10 minutes. Feel free to grab another drink. The bathrooms are out in the corridor, but otherwise we'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, thanks everyone. Gonna get started now. Alright, so it's the last talk of the year. It's gonna be a great one. I'll pass over to Sushant.
Hello. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about frictionless teamwork using Gitflow. Who here knows what Gitflow is? Who here doesn't know? All right. Who here doesn't know and is a developer? Cool. So, essentially, Gitflow is a way of using Git. Git is obviously our source control management tool that we tend to use these days. It's one of the most popular ones. It's just a way to kind of use it. It's a convention, essentially, at the end of the day. Essentially, all these lines, I'll explain what they are at a high level, and I'll give you a bit of a demo at the end. So essentially, these lines are just representations of branches or, parts of how you've developed your code over time, representations, showing changes, each line being, a transition from one code state to another sort of thing. And then, you can branch and fork and whatever. Let's get to that a bit later. So yeah, really branches, it's all in the name, right? So it doesn't matter what you call your branch. You can call it Bob, you can call it fixing this feature, you can call it tech debt, you can call it whatever you want. At the end of the day, it's up to you. What Gitflow really does is it kind of encourages a convention so that everybody in the team has a common understanding. And then using that understanding as a team, you're able to really push forward and build features and functionality rapidly. But the key thing is you need to kind of stick to it. Otherwise, if somebody kind of falls out, it can become a bit of a pain. To be honest, I did that a few days ago. I broke convention. It took me like 2.5 hours to figure out what I messed up. So it does happen, but it helps to resolve those kind of issues. So the general idea is you have using these with Gitflow at least. The general idea is you have these 5? Yes, 5 types of branches, and then you kind of treat them with certain rules and respect, maybe. And then if you do that, it's all meant to be frictionless, which is why the title of the talk is what it is. So let me just give a quick overview of what each of them kind of stand for. So the main branch, which is the line at the very top, is for keeping track of what is the latest code that is in production right now. If somebody new joins your team and they want to understand, hey, somebody reported this issue, how do I find out what is the latest code? They just have to check out the main branch. It used to be called the master branch until political correctness kind of changed it. And I still call it master, to be honest, but whatever. It's really what convention is really what it comes down to, right? It's just a bunch of strings. The main branch must compile, and as per convention as well. You cannot break your main branch because that's just bad. You want to be able to find issues on the main branch as quickly as possible. That sort of stuff. You should never ever directly make a change on the main branch. You should always branch out, make a change, and then use what's called a pull request to make to pull the change back into your main branch. So that's essentially, I'll come back to this a bit later, but that's essentially what this red line is at the very top. It's a pull request onto the main branch. So, and this is a bit of an interesting one. So let's say some team outside of your team is making some sort of changes, and they're saying, hey, if we make this backend change or this sort of functionality change, does it impact you? The best place for you to check would be on the main branch. Reason being is that's, that works, everything's fine, you should have tested in the past, made sure there's no issues with it. So if, some downstream system makes a change, you should be, that's the place you want to pick it up, because, if tomorrow they deploy that's where it's going to be noticed, right? You may have made changes on a different branch. You may be, actively working on new features in the future, which are going to be released in the future. So, there's no point testing it with the latest code. You want to test on the main branch. It may be a month old, maybe 2 months old. Depends what kind of dinosaur you work for, really. So the next branch is the develop branch. This is the exciting one. This contains everything that's inside develop, plus everything that you as a feature team have been working on. However, it may not just be your team, it may be multiple teams. So if you have, the concept of squads, they may all be contributing back to this one branch, right? So there could be a lot of noise and conflicts, that kind of stuff, but that's all part of the fun. It's all part of, what it's all about, right? Everyone's working on this one branch, potentially. Again, similar to the main branch, it must compile. There's memes out there, who broke the build. That's really, it comes from the main branch, from the develop branch, who broke the build on develop, right? So, typically you run unit tests and that kind of stuff as part of your CI/CD process to make sure you don't break the build or that kind of stuff. Again, similar to the main branch, do not do direct commits. Exactly the same thing, use pull requests. But one thing you do need to kind of keep in mind is any change you pull into the develop branch, keep it clean. If you have to-dos, you have hacky workarounds and that kind of stuff, get rid of those, fix them up, clean them. This is where you want it to be clean. This is, after it's gone in here and someone's approved your PR, it's going straight to prod, essentially. Not straight, but kind of, essentially. It's going to prod. You've given it the green light. So keep it clean. But there are scenarios where you can't actually keep it clean. In that scenario, there's a notion of a long-standing feature branch. I'll kind of touch on that a little bit later. I don't want to say too much about that. Sorry, I mentioned this one already, the testing prod. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention that, did I? Oh no, you guys gotta watch me. See, this is the bad thing about animations. Oh boy.
That's why it's a mistake that it has to be interactive, right?
Yes. So if you're doing any sort of feature development, you want to make sure that you're doing the testing for that feature development on this branch. So a developer would go make some changes, work on those improvements. It would get merged or it would be put onto the develop branch, and then you would kind of test it there. The reason being, you may have other developers also working on similar features at the same time, somebody else on the same team, somebody else on another team, and they will all be working on the same thing. You may actually cause issues with each other. So you want to try to pick those issues up as early as possible because it'll be quicker to fix it, essentially. Now the fun one for developers, at least, the feature branch. So these ones are pretty much always branched from develop. They are typically owned by a single individual, so it's not really owned by a team like the other two. So the reason for the single individual is because there's this concept that Git has called rebasing. You never want to use rebase if you're on a branch which is owned by a team, because Git commit hashes change and that kind of stuff. That's a topic for another talk, but do not use rebase on a shared branch. Feature branches you can, because it's your branch. No one else touches your branch. And you can directly commit to the branch because it's your branch. And you can make dirty code, you can do whatever you want. Just fix it before you create a PR. And give it a name that kind of describes what you're working on. Bare minimum, feature / some sort of Jira ticket number. So that's I've used either of these. You can make it a little bit longer. You can add other sort of things. So if in different Git tools they have like a concept of viewing branches by folders. So if you add multiple slashes, you can kind of group your branches and stuff. So I'm just giving ideas. There's no right or wrong answer. Just as long as you kind of follow the feature / star convention, that's probably what Gitflow kind of dictates. Yeah, and ideally you want to have a single feature, which is also why I've kind of suggested having multiple branches, especially if you make a mistake, like I missed a requirement or oops, missed another requirement, so like a take 3 sort of branch name, that sort of thing. And like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter if your code doesn't compile, as long as the last one kind of compiles, your intermediate commits don't have to compile. Release branches, try to speed up a bit. These ones are branched from develop branch, so the purple one, it's a branch from develop. Treat this the same as a develop branch because it's essentially is, it hasn't gone out, it's a release candidate, it might go out, that sort of stuff. Naming convention, because the naming convention, it implies that it branched from develop because you know that since it's release / it came from develop branch at some point. And that's actually one of the really cool things about Gitflow. The conventions implies what the parent branch of any particular branch was. So if you follow a convention, you just make it easier to know how to merge it back at the end when you create your PR. So in this case, let's say you're doing a release, you're going to release 1.5.0, that sort of thing. And the point at which you kind of create this release branch, so let's say you create a release branch here, right? At that point, the develop branch becomes the next release after the current release, or the next +1. So that's kind of the idea. Once you're done feature work on one branch, you can kind of start working on the next sort of release. And then, after you create a release branch, you may actually find issues. You do testing, you do regression, that can take days, weeks, depending on where you work or what you work on. But you can make those fixes on the release branch. And like I said, treat it like a develop branch, so that's why you need to make sure you stick to the convention of using feature branches and pull requests back to the release branch. And the last one, which is the hotfix branch. So this is essentially the same as a feature work on the develop. However, like I said with the naming conventions, it implies that it was branched from master or name, whatever you want to call it. It implies there was a branch for that. Typically, it's used to fix issues in prod which you want to get fixed as soon as possible. You don't want to wait for some sort of different release or whatever. And that's the other thing. So when you make a change on this branch, also with the release one, I should have mentioned this earlier, you want to merge that change back to develop similar with the release. So you want to make sure that you keep this fix that you have so that you can include it in future releases. And the other one which I mentioned, which is the special case, long-standing feature branch. Sometimes you may be working on a feature which is really big. The organization doesn't want to necessarily launch it as soon as you're done. Maybe there'd be some sort of testing, there'd be some sort of process internally. The feature may be kept in limbo. They're not sure if they want to launch it or not. Like one of the ones which I worked on a few years ago was to do with onboarding. So we would rework the entire onboarding flow, but we were waiting for somebody to fire the gun to say, all right, now we can launch the new flow. We couldn't feature flag it, stuff like that. So that's why a long-standing feature branch was how we decided to build it. Again, it branched from develop. It gets treated like a develop branch. So any features, again, it's the same feature sort of flow. Naming convention, look, I couldn't find any sort of official naming convention on this. What I like to use is just LSFB because that kind of suggests what it is. And like I said, new onboarding flow, that's kind of what I like to do. Treat it the same as the develop branch. Ideally, there are scenarios which you do want to break that convention. I can't think of any right now. I did have some in mind at the beginning, but I'll think of them later. And merge back to develop when you're done, and then it will be ready for the next release. Essentially, is how you would kind of do it. And another thing to call out is, since this is a long-standing branch, you want to keep it up to date. So you may want to have somebody on the team which is responsible for frequently merging changes from the develop branch, or the latest feature work from the develop branch back into this branch, so that you don't have any surprises near to the end of development.
That's a story that we want to hear.
No, I just heard about someone who knew someone who knew someone.
Was it a mirror?
All right, so I want to do a demo. Hopefully it's not like this Steve Jobs moment where he got pissed off because something didn't work. Let's see if I can do it. Oop, it's not good there. All right, so I'm gonna try to is a keyword, do a whole 3 or 4 releases in a project. So let's call this project CocoaHeads. Sorry if you can't see, I'll make the font a little bit bigger in a minute.
So you did a good job of pronouncing CocoaHeads. CocoaHeads.
Where is it? Okay, hopefully now it's legible. All right, cool. So what we have here is a simple app that's made for SwiftUI to kind of load. I'll also cd into this directory. This Cocoa. All right, so we're cd into the project. Xcode has this nice thing where it automatically initializes a Git repository. As you can see here, if you can read, it's created a main branch for us. So let's literally just start by creating a develop branch. So git checkout develop. Hooray, we have a develop branch. Simple. We've had some, I'm trying to keep this as business rated as possible, right? As weird as it might sound, saying it that way. We have a new requirement. We have our first requirement, let's say. For our next release, we want to ensure that we say hi to the entire CocoaHeads community. So let's make a quick change to our app. Let's maybe make the image a bit bigger. That's not what we want, is it? The image should look a lot nicer now. Fit. And let's change the text as well, because we're talking to the CocoaHeads people, right? You're not talking to the world. And let's make it a little bit larger. Hooray! That app looks nice. Hello, CocoaHeads.
Amazing.
Amazing. Some Git things, mainly my Git commits and stuff. Cool, so the changes, let's see if everyone can see me zoom, yep. So these are the changes we've made. We've basically added the larger font and larger image essentially, and we changed the text to CocoaHeads, right? Let's stage it and add a commit message. I'm going to break convention. You should always put your Git commit, what ticket you're working on. In this case, let's say BAU1, but I may break convention just out of nervousness, but BAU1, where we added.
Did you mean to create a feature branch first?
Yes, I do need to create a feature branch. See, that's a good point. So we are on develop. So let's create a feature branch. So
the plan.
Hello, CocoaHeads. Right, so we created a feature branch, and now we're just adding new CocoaHeads welcome message. Right. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but let's do that. Cool, so now we have a feature branch which has our code on it. We've done our work. We want to create a PR. It's hard to do a PR in this demo, so I'm just going to literally merge it back to develop. And I'll do that a few times.
I can improve.
All right, perfect. So we merged this change back to develop, and now it's on develop. And we can actually start the release process because we're happy with this, right? So we can do another git checkout and do the release branch. So git checkout release, and let's just call it 1.0.0. Cool. So now we have created a release branch. And if you look at how it's kind of set up, we have one commit message, we have also one circle, and we have 3 branches kind of pointing out. So we have the release branch, we have the CocoaHeads feature branch, and the develop branch. As we make more changes, some of these will move on. This CocoaHeads one would definitely remain where it is, that sort of stuff. Cool. So it's let's send it off to be tested and start working on our future features, right? So we've had a new feature come in, BAU2. Let's add tabs. We want to make the app better. We're going to add some tabs, but we don't want to launch this feature as soon as possible. There's going to be other things that are going to be added over time. But for our team, we just need to add the tabs. So this is a good candidate for some sort of long-standing feature branch.
Sorry, just out of curiosity. So since you already have fork installed, why don't you use the GUI?
I prefer to use a command line, to be honest.
Fair enough.
Look, my personal preference is I like to review my changes in fork because it provides a nice GUI and everything. But everything other than that, I prefer command line, to be honest.
Right.
Cool. So, like I said, we're starting a new feature. So let's go back to the develop branch. Run develop, and now we can start the new feature. So git checkout on BAU2. And so it's called adding the text field. Add text field. Oh no, tag. Sorry, I'm reading ahead. That's BAU3. And it's not a feature. Sorry, it is a long-standing feature branch. Yes, LSFP. Let's do lowercase as well because I'm gonna mess up later.
Sure.
SBF. It's LSFP, right? Cool. So now we're adding tabs. And minus B, you're right. Git checkout minus. All right. So we've created a long-standing feature branch for this feature. We can work on it, other teams can work on it, but now it's our turn to work on it. So let's branch again for our actual feature. So git checkout minus B feature. I'm going to be a bit lazy here, and we're going to have the same ticket number. So BAU-2 / adding tabs. This is a bad convention. We're using the same similar branch name. Do not do this. All right, cool. So we're on the feature branch. Let's add some tabs. Again, live coding. Let's bring up the side panel. We know that there's things coming in. So let's actually optimize this a little bit. Let's move this into its own sort of class. For the CocoaHeads view, because this is just for the CocoaHeads people. Let's copy this entire thing and plonk it in there. Cool, so it should look the same. With a globe, which is not, put it away. It's fine, we'll fix that later. Cool, and now let's include the CocoaHeads view. And Swift UI reloads and looks the same. Cool. Now let's add the tab view, right? So let's add tab.
I'm looking for the baseball.
Oh, that wasn't meant to happen. That was not meant to happen. Why isn't auto completing? Oh no! Anyone remember the syntax? I don't know the syntax.
Can you just get rid of select?
First the view itself, then the content. No. I heard.
I know it's like an array. You have to add an array.
It completed for me today.
It can be for me as well.
You could just do tab view and curly brackets, right?
Yeah, you don't need the selection.
Alright, cool. If that's the case, then perfect. Let's try that.
Put in your tab.
Let's see if this works. And then I need to add a tab item.
Tab item, that's it.
And then a label with a title system image. Cool. So let's just call this CocoaHeads. Oh, let's call it home actually. And system image, we'll just call it the heart because we all love to be here.
I think the label needs bracket enclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An R in heart.
Sorry?
There's an R in heart.
Heart, alright. Cool, yeah, we've got a little heart down there. Perfect. Let's add another, just for the sake of it, let's add another thing. So let's add a text field for the other tab and we'll just call it coming soon.
Busy.
And we call it more. And we can just call it gear or something. Cool, so now we have 2 tabs. Hooray, we've added the tab view.
Congratulations.
All right, let's commit this change, right? So remember, we're on the feature branch now, right? So let's just review what we've changed. We've obviously it's very small. I'll zoom in a bit. We've created the new CocoaHeads view. We just moved everything that was in the other one. We have also just added the tab view and we're referencing the CocoaHeads view, that sort of thing. And then a bunch of Xcode project file stuff, which is kind of unavoidable. Cool, so now let's just call it DAU2 adding tabs. Cool. So we're on the tabs view, or the tabs branch. We're done. Let's merge it back to the long-standing feature branch. Again, we had a pull request. Balaz was kind enough to do it again. Cool. So now we have merged the feature into our long-standing feature branch. Some other team need to go off and they're going to work on this feature on their own time. Meanwhile, let's work on our next feature sort of thing. So our next feature is to add just make it a little bit more personal. We're going to let people enter their name on the main app. So we're going to kind of forget about this tab view that we built and we're going to work on this other feature. So let's go back to the develop branch. Oh, we're on develop. And as you can see, everything's gone back to the way it was. We've lost our CocoaHeads view that we so lovingly created. So let's add the text field, right? Cool, we need to make it more personal. So we don't want to just say hello, CocoaHeads. We want to say hi to the exact person that we're kind of talking to, right? So let's, I have it already. So let's add a text field. And the text would be some sort of name prompt. So let's just put it up here for now. At state. And let's just call it world. And then we can do font. Let's make it bigger so it looks like the other one. Large. And it doesn't really look very well aligned to the left, so let's just kind of bring it to the middle. So multi-line center. All right, I promise it does get a little bit more exciting than this. And then you just add a little bit of padding, so it just looks a bit nicer. Cool, so now we have a text field. We can put our name in. All right, it's personal now. Our next feature is complete. So we never branched. Let's branch. See, you don't have to necessarily branch before you start working on it. Check out MSB feature, BAU3.
Personal name, whatever.
Sorry?
Personal name, whatever.
Yeah, let's call it personal. Cool. Perfect. Now we have the branch, so let us, looks fine. Arrow all, BAU 3, heading, name, field. Right, cool. We're on the feature branch, we're happy. Let's do another PR, back to develop. I'm gonna try to speed this up a bit. Check out develop. And merge our PR for BA. No, actually, let's not do that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. We will come back to that. So meanwhile, there has been some noise coming from Christian and Zach that there was a typo in our release that we worked on earlier.
No. Nothing gets past Christian.
You're not wrong.
So let's go back to our
master.
Sorry? No, let's go back to our release. Sorry, we never released. So on the release branch, what do we have? We have hello CocoaHeads, right? The bug that they've said is our C and our H needs to be uppercase. Branding is important, right? So let's just fix that up. Everything else is apparently okay, and they've said that we can merge it to release and send it out to the world.
Where's localization and accessibility?
Yeah, we also have a few more requirements now. Other words,
All right, so let's do that. BAU 1, fixing typo.
Sorry.
Yes.
Excuse me. So this is a progression defect. So which branch does it fall under? Is it under the feature branch or?
So this is currently on, we've created the release branch at the very beginning, right?
Oh, right.
So, but it hadn't been shipped, so it hadn't actually been shipped to master. So remember the concept is the master branch is always what's being released to the world.
Okay, so what about, this is during the regression testing,
Yes.
but what about during the development?
Yeah, it
phase and you find a defect.
Yep.
So which branch does it fall under? Is it under the feature branch?
That's
or?
again, that's a convention the team can follow. What I like to follow is just following the feature sort of moniker, where the third part would just be what you're trying to fix. So if there's a typo, you just say fixing typos, or maybe it's fixing build issue or fixing unit test issues. That kind of stuff.
I guess
of the branch.
You fix it
So
when
you
you
still
find
call it a
though.
feature? Is that what you call it? You still call it?
Yeah, look, because it's kind of still part of that.
Unexpected feature.
Until you've shipped it, it's probably still a feature. Is how
Aren't bug and feature interchangeable in XML?
yeah.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah. What was that? So yeah, so let's check this in, fixing typo. I should have branched, but that's all right. So now the release branch is ready to go. We've got the green light. So let's merge it into my main, not master, main.
Your PR process is just so efficient.
Yeah, we need to talk about quality.
Anyone from testing here? Yep. Okay.
So we're on the main branch. We've gotten approval by Apple to release. So let's merge it in. Git merge. Release. So at this point, main now contains everything that was on our release 1.0 branch. If a new team member starts, they know what's currently in production, and they can see it easily. Yeah, cool. So that's where we're at. So let's move on to the last part. I promise it does speed up a bit. So now that we've merged into main, we also need to get that last fix into our develop branch. So let's just go back to our develop branch. Back to the develop branch, and we need to get that last hotfix that we did from release into develop. Again, it's now on develop, so just double check. Now it says hello CocoaHeads. And then let's also at the same time merge this back to the text field branch, right? Because we need to make sure that's kind of up to date. So that's a nice thing to do. Git branch to see what branches you have. So the personal name one is a text field branch. So git checkout that, and then we can merge develop into here. But we will have an issue where we have a merge conflict. So this is because we've modified similar lines of code in both the branches. And you can see here we've modified the hello and the CocoaHeads sort of stuff. Cool, so what do we need to fix? So we just need to stick with this one. So get rid of the CocoaHeads because we have the text field underneath, right? Hello world. And it's gone through rigorous testing, right? We know this works. Just resolve the conflict, stage it.
It's Friday afternoon,
Cool.
They want to release up.
Cool. So now our feature branch is, good to go. Let's merge it back to develop again. Try to do this as quick as possible. Git, check out, and develop. We can merge this. Git merge. Oh, typo. Git merge. Now our develop branch contains the stuff for the text field, right? So you can see it's still showing the text field. We've got testing approval. Let's get it out. Same as before. We need to. You can see it's very repetitive, right? It's just the same commands over and over again. Just change a few letters, right? So git check out -b feature. Oh no, feature release 2.0. Woohoo!
It's a generous
Yeah.
major release.
And this time our testing team has grown, so we're able to actually merge it directly to master or main straight away, right? So let's just go straight to main. Let's check out main, and then we can merge release to main. Cool. So main, we've shipped our code, we've shipped our text field. But as soon as we shipped it, the heads of the CocoaHeads have said, "Oh no, we've made a mistake. We've lost our branding. It's no longer CocoaHeads. We're not saying hi to CocoaHeads anymore." So they've asked for an immediate fix from us. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically make what's called a hotfix on the main branch. If you think back to what I mentioned earlier, main branch you don't make any changes on. So hotfix. A hotfix is essentially a feature branch. Just the naming convention implies it's created from the main branch. So actually, wait, there's a bit of a funny thing with this. We have an incident raised, incident 5, which we need to fix, and that's essentially what this is. They want to just add a logo of CocoaHeads, essentially, that's what they asked for, right? So let's do a checkout, hotfix, inci5, adding logo. Right. So they've asked for a logo. Let's quickly add a logo, right? And look what I found. I found a logo. Let's put it into the asset catalog. Ta-da! And this is single scale. Cool. So we have you can't see it here, but trust me, it's a logo. It works. On the content view, let's just add CocoaHeads as an image.
Rejecting the PR because it's not an SVG.
I didn't have time to ask for SVG.
We have that now, actually.
Do we?
I didn't mention that.
That's good.
Isn't the text code 15? Shouldn't you use the enums generated by it?
Also,
I'm
your
actually
image-
using 14.
Your
14
image
is 14.
doesn't have the right capitalization, so.
Why isn't this working?
Co-workers are harsh.
There you go, it worked this time. Okay. Xcode just being Xcode. Yay, we got the new image, right? So we'll make the marketing gods happy.
What's your design team?
Oh, they're a crackpot. Trust me, they're good.
My logo is like 15 years old.
60 by 60.
Cool. So we've added the replace the image, and we've added the image essentially.
Is it decorative?
Very decorative. In C5, adding image, and like I said before, the hotfix branch is essentially like a feature branch. So we branch back to main. So git checkout main, and then we merge back to main. So git merge. And now at this point, we can do a release. Marketing gods are happy because they got their CocoaHeads logo. Hooray! And just for completeness and to kind of help explain the benefits of doing things with this convoluted way of moving code and branches around like this. So let's get this latest change from hotfix back to our tabs view. So remember, it's on our main. We need to, as part of the hotfix process, we need to merge it back to develop. So git checkout develop. and then we merge the hotfix into here. Again, now it's on develop, so we can now go to our long-standing feature branch. So git checkout lsfb, and then we can merge the develop branch. Git merge develop to get the latest. Again, we have conflicts, which is expected because we made changes in that general area. Oh, and also we move things around majorly, actually. So this one is one of those scenarios where you need to understand what changes were made, which is why it's beneficial to get somebody on the team to regularly make these sort of merges, so that you don't wait 3 months or a long time for the change to be kind of merged. So in the content view, we want to keep this, but on the CocoaHeads we want to use the other image, right? So let's put the image onto the CocoaHeads view, remove the globe, and on the content view we want to keep that. So let's go with that. That should build. All right, so there we go. We have the cup without tabs. That's obviously because I understood what changes were needed to be made, but that's what I'm trying to explain is you need to keep on top of any sort of changes which are made and keep the long-standing feature branches up to date. Let's just merge into our long-standing feature branch, and at this point, I can be repetitive and I could create a release, but nothing's going to change. Really, merge from long-standing feature branch back to develop to release to prod. It's all just the same sort of flow. Gitflow it's about the flow, making sure the code and the changes the flow in this very repetitive sort of manner. Yeah. Let's move on. Just some other considerations we need to just kind of touch on. We've only thought about really touched the surface. It's always a good idea to kind of snapshot your build tools and your branches with having the version. So if you know that a particular branch is only going to compile on Xcode 14, for example, you want to make sure that that's your build.yaml essentially is part of your that branch, right? So that if, let's say tomorrow you release with Xcode 14, then you start working on the next release which supports Xcode 15 build tools, you want to make sure you can still do a hotfix without having any sort of issues like that. Another consideration, I don't know if any people who saw me do this, but do you merge a hotfix to develop, or do you merge the hotfix to master and then you merge the master to develop? It's a convention. It really doesn't matter what you do. There's no right or wrong answer. I suppose the right answer is what the team is kind of agreed. Sometimes it's better to merge to master and then master back, because if you have, let's say, a bunch of hotfixes potentially, you could just kind of merge them all in one go, one CI/CD pipeline. You don't need to do it multiple times. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes you may need to make just a single change. You committed, just a single change. You want to bring that across to another branch without getting everything else from that branch. That's called a cherry pick. You kind of have to be careful with cherry picks as well, because I know, like I've seen sometimes with developers, you might just put all your changes into the one commit. You can't really cherry pick a single file from the entire commit. You need to commit the file on its own and then cherry pick that single commit to another branch. But that's, just, again, it's about practice. It's also a good idea to have like a different app version across branches. That's usually my convention, or what I find is one of the first things you do as soon as you create a release branch is you bump the version. Be it a minor, be it a major. Another consideration would be the use of Git tags. Git has a concept of tags. Gitflow does kind of suggest tagging on main. I don't get the point if you have a release branch, but really it's, again, convention. It's up to you guys. There's no right or wrong answer. That's a good thing, like Gitflow, right? And the last point, which I found interesting when I was kind of doing this talk, was a bunch of companies, and in particular, it's actually not noticed at least, they're calling Gitflow legacy now. So they're encouraging trunk-based development, which is okay. I thought that came before Gitflow and it wasn't as good, but that's really what I read up on. I don't think it's legacy at all, to be honest. I think it does a really good job. You guys saw how we were able to modify the same line 4 times, right? And we didn't have any major issues. Fine, it was a basic change, but at least we were able to track it easily and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I've got a question around the Git merge. So what do you suggest when I create a feature branch and I work on like sort of kind of a long step, not really long, but it's big features, and during my development there are a lot of commits going on in a develop branch. And should I use Git merge or Git rebase? So when to use which?
So Git rebase, it's best to use that right before a merge back to the develop branch. So like if you're working on a feature branch, you're merging back to develop.
Yeah.
You should do a Git rebase, because what that basically does is it knows where your branch was created and what. Can I get that? Let's go back to the good old graph. So let's say you have this you created this feature here, right? And then you do a rebase after this commit has been created. What it essentially does, it moves this line from here to here. And then later on, so one, it makes your code a little bit cleaner because you don't see these commits kind of showing up out of nowhere when you look at the Git history, and just makes it a lot cleaner. So it's better to, every time you're doing a merge back to, from one of your own branches where you are allowed to, make whatever changes you want. On one of those branches, do a rebase before merging back is recommended. Sometimes people also do a squash commit, so you can't see what intermediate commits you had made. It's really up to you. Like, depends. The problem with doing that also is the squash commit is you kind of lose the ability to do the cherry pick later on if you knew that you had committed a one line or a small change in a single fix. So, yes?
Just an addition to that, like if you rebase before you merge into develop, makes it easier to step back on your commits if something went wrong.
Yes.
While if you are further down the line, you need to step back. You don't know if that other branch is causing the issue or not.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have any issues, like be it a build issue or even some sort of requirement issue, you kind of know that did you introduce or did the change before you introduce it? Yes, back?
Yeah, you said something earlier in the talk about feature branches, how it doesn't matter if the commits necessarily build in your feature branch because it's not been merged back to develop yet. I just recommend that you do make it build anyway, and the reason for that is if you need to use git bisect later on, if you hit one of those commits that don't build, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
Basically, you have to exclude them. There'll be a bunch in a feature branch. It just slows you down.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, and that's also a valid reason. Yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything right or wrong about doing it in any particular way. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, I have a comment on the tagging. So I would usually tag my releases on main after they're out. Don't do it until it is fully out because you know if there's a hotfix and then you have to change the tag whatever it's just annoying. But also, I don't like to keep release branches around. So I would, once I've tagged it, I will delete the release branches and also all of the feature branches and everything.
Yes, that's
a good reason. Yeah. Builds up on your Git server, whatever. I mean, it takes up a little bit of space, doesn't really impact too much, just makes it hard to find anything. Plus, if you tag and have a release branch, you really have no easy way to know which one is correct. So that's kind of my argument of doing that. My question though is, if you work on a project by yourself, like let's say it's a hobby thing or a personal project or just an indie app or something, do you still follow these same things? And where do you think it's fine to compromise in that workflow?
Yeah, so this app that I'm working on right now, I don't actually follow it, to be honest, because too small, and it is like going after a bee with a bazooka sort of thing. It's too much. But that said, I have, if with my personal project, like if I am trying to POC something or test something, I would definitely do some sort of branching and that kind of stuff, and take advantage of the tools. It really just depends. There's no right answer again. Yeah.
It also depends on the size of the project. Like if you have anything that's a decent size, just because one person's working on it doesn't mean you don't run into the same problems that you run into with a team where you start on a feature, but it might be going on for 3 months and you're shipping smaller releases in the meantime. And so it can be beneficial to follow something like this, just for keeping things tidy and not sort of having to pick a point to branch off of just to do like a hotfix release, while you're sort of running away with the main feature by merging it straight into develop.
Yeah, and I think it's a learning, right? Because I think I wanted to figure out where's like the best, what's like the minimum thing. Like I think for me, I would always create a branch when I start with something new or a new ticket or whatever. But I don't use release branches or hotfix branches. I just merge when something is merged into main, that's a release. And but there's also a lot of people that swear that even if they're a single person, they will still do pull requests and use it as a tool to quickly review their code in isolation and, for example, never commit directly, but always do it via a PR that they approve themselves with. I didn't think it was possible, would be worse than this guy approving your changes.
I saw the code, man.
But yeah, just thought if you had any, like, what do you think is like the minimum thing you always should do, and like where's the trade-off?
I think it really comes down to you need to understand if you're taking a shortcut, like what I said earlier, with what I do with my project. Understand why you're doing it. Like, so the reason I do it like that is because I know I'm going to start this feature now. I'll be done in 2 or 3 hours. If it's a really big feature, I may, I would go down some sort of branching strategy, long-standing feature plan, sort of thing. And as for like tagging, release, tracking, that kind of stuff, that's all in place as well. Like I have a way of tracking that. Look, again, it's really Git. That's the amazing thing about Git. Git's a Git. There's no right or wrong way of using it as long as you kind of understand the right ways of what you can do with it, what you can't, and then just make the most of it. Yeah. Yep.
Just a question with the releases. Could it Gitflow potentially complicate the release process because everyone's merging into develop and you're releasing from develop? Then you have to be mindful of when you last release and all the commits since then that you don't unintentionally release something that is meant to be released.
See, that's the thing. So that's why you should create your release branch as soon as possible before you start any future work. So that way you know that release is a clean cut off what's to be released, right? So you can make whatever changes on develop, it's not going to impact the release. Make whatever changes on release, it's not going to impact develop, vice versa, right? And then when you're done, you release it out, you bring those changes back. At that point, you have to do like you have to do some sort of pull request. If there's any conflicts or anything like that, at that point you need to check them.
Gotcha.
Any QA you should do at that point. That kind of stuff. CI/CD potentially, yeah.
Protecting the branch and so on, right?
No, you don't protect branches, yeah. It's okay.
It's really not.
Wait.
Another angle of that is, so you like to do release branches as like you do a release, and then as soon as you know we're working towards the next, you will create a release branch and merge all feature stuff into that. Is that right?
So I like to. What's the question again?
Well, if I understood you, like when you said I want to create a release branch as soon as possible, what does that mean?
So that means like before I start working on stuff that I don't want to release.
Yeah.
Like the
shiny feature.
Future feature. I would create the release branch so that that's kind of itself a snapshot, saying that anything that I work on developing is no longer going to be worked on. Right? And then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, so another angle, and again, it's always a preference, but as long as it works with the team. So another angle I've seen is that you basically all feature work goes into development. And then when you are ready to make the release, like all the changes we want in this release is ready, then you make the release branch and then say, okay, only bug fixes can be applied to this now. No new features, no nothing else. We're just making it ready testing.
Yeah, I think that's basically that trunk-based development thing that I've said is kind of starting to take
Like
off.
the trunk based, yeah.
Yeah.
I probably prefer that more.
I feel that makes sense with things like server, like backend development. I don't know if with mobile, I feel it's better to keep it with Gitflow sort of thing.
Wouldn't it sort of depend on what your release cycle is? If you have here is our release cycle, and then someone's making a decision about which features are in, that's going to be different to going, we're going to do a release when this feature is ready, where the target is variable date.
Yeah.
So that might change the flavor of what works. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think that's the difference where trunk-based development, then let's call it, is quite popular in backend, where basically you want to be able to release every day or several times a day, basically anything that changed. Let's get it out in time.
But I think another thing with trunk based, they encourage a lot more what's it called, feature flags. So toggling things on and off. So if you're working on a feature which is not ready to be released, you make sure it's toggled off.
Yeah.
You can do that, but you should do that, and you can do that with Gitflow, but it's probably not as important because there is a way for you to keep the not ready to release code separate.
And I think at the end of the day, just whatever works for the team, as long as you all agree and do the same thing, then it will work like this.
Yeah, but you still have to have it, if you do that, the stuff with the feature flag that's not complete still has to build. It just doesn't have to work correctly, but it must at least build.
Exactly, yeah.
And not fail Apple tests.
Cool. Right, a round of applause. Cool. Awesome. Well, that's all we have for you tonight. Thanks again for coming. Hope to see you next month at the quiz. Remember, it's on the 14th of December, and please bring any swag that we can use as prizes if you can. Otherwise, have a good month, and we'll see you then. Thanks.